Hello, my name's Gary Ford, Managing Director of Tiger Hobbies Limited, UK Hobby Importers and Distributors, and welcome to Part 5, which is the British Army advancing to the Rhine. After Hitler's last massive gamble in the West, the Battle of the Bulge, German forces were pulling their best armoured units back east of Berlin to face the Soviet juggernaut coming the other way. They started to slightly weaken the West Wall. And even though the Allies, especially the US Army, had taken a lot of casualties, the Germans had lost just as many, and in the Battle of Bulge lost almost 100,000. Allied forces were already building up more and more, with the new US 15th Army coming into play, and the British Army coming to its actual peak of strength. The next obstacle will be the River Rhine, Germany's massive natural defence line in the west. Just before the Battle of Bulge, the British Army started at last to get new tanks, and among these was the British A34 Comet Tank, arrived in Europe in late November 1944 at storage depots in Belgium, ready for units to swap their tired Sherman Fireflies over to the new 17-pounder equipped Comet. The Comet tank sacrificed some of the Cromwell's tanks 45 mile an hour down to about 32 mile an hour, but with much heavier armour, a much bigger and higher velocity gun, so at last the British had a tank with better balance of firepower, armour and mobility. But unfortunately the Battle of Bulge put paid to the conversion of the new tank, so the Sherman Fireflies yet again had to fight German armour. With the ending of the Battle of the Bulge, the A34 Comet could at last start to be issued to units, and one of the first was the 11th Armoured Division, in fact the only Armoured Division to be fully equipped with Comets. With me is a fantastic Tamiya 135th A34 Comet in the markings of the Black Bulge, the 11th Armoured Division, and also with me is a British A41 Centurion Mark I. Following on from the A34 Comet, the British were testing the A41 Centurion Mark I, which is a modern tank, what we refer to as the universal tank, and later on the main battle tank. So effective was this tank that it's still in service today as a gun tank, somewhat modified though with the South African Army called the Elephant, but it's basically still a Centurion. Not bad from a tank from World War II, and from the country that gave us the Matilda Mark I just 6 years before. In fact, I'm showing a picture of that behind me again. What a horrible tank. Testing in late 1944, this tank would be just missed out on combat in World War II, arriving in Germany just as the surrenders were happening in the spring of 1945. But the Centurion will go on to be the greatest post-war tank with the greatest combat history spread over almost 40 years. At the same time, the US Army was starting to receive the M24 Chaffee tank and the M26 Pershing tank, heavy tank, about the same time as the British got the A34 Comet. We shall now look at Operation Blackcock. Just as the Battle of the Bulge was drawing to a close, British Army's 12th Corps, commanded by Lieutenant General Ritchie, the general who lost the Gazala battles, started with 3 divisions plus a Commando Brigade to start Operation Blackcock. Blackcock, named after the male grouse. The objective was the Ruhr Triangle of the towns of Roermond and Sittard in the Netherlands and Einsberg just inside Germany. Facing the British were the German 12th SS Corps, strengthened by German paratroopers, again acting as elite infantry. Lieutenant General Ritchie's 3 main divisions would attack from the southern part of the triangle, and the Commando Brigade would come down from the north. So, 7th Armoured Division attacked on the 20th of January 1945, heading north to the towns of Echt and Susterd. The 52nd Lowland Division would strike northeast, pushing towards Heinsberg, and the 43rd Wessex Division would attack the town of Bremen. The 7th Armoured Division were held up by stiff German resistance at the Dutch village of St. Just. The German paratroopers knew this village and its crossroads were key, and the only road that 7th Armoured Brigade or Division tanks could take, as the very wet conditions were preventing tanks flanking across the fields. It took 4 attacks by the Durham Light Infantry and the Rifle Brigade Infantry to take St Just and to get the tanks on their way to the next objective, which was Montford. It cost the British infantry some 100 casualties, but they killed at least 100 German paratroopers. Rather than fight another tough action getting through to Montford, the British called in the RAF and Royal Canadian Air Force fighter bombers and blasted Montford, but at the cost of nearly 200 Dutch civilians. Montford was taken on the 21st of January 1945. By the 26th of January 1945, Operation Blackcock was completed, but it cost about 1,200 British casualties, plus about 20 tanks, and the fighting, though small, was extremely fierce, resulting in 2 posthumous Victoria Crosses. Blackcock was a short but fierce fight completed with good tactics by the British Army, not taking unnecessary risk and mass casualties. The Germans lost about 2,000 casualties and over 2,000 prisoners of war. Operation Blackcock paved the way for the main British push towards the Rhine, Operation Veritable, and this will be a much tougher task. In Part 6, we shall look at Operation Veritable and the US cooperation Operation Grenade, which is the push through to the Rhine River and get to the town of Wesel, ready to cross the Rhine into Germany.